The 19th Amendment states, "The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation." Today, in our great nation, young girls can grow up to become well-educated, successful women, and even speak their minds. No woman can be held back because of her gender. The 19th Amendment began the true equality of women, but how did the original women's suffrage movement begin? The 19th Amendment wasn't the actual start. The women's suffrage movement began in the late 1840s. These women in the 1840s labored strenuously till their last breath, but their impact on society was ongoing. Let's travel backwards in time to the year 1848 in Seneca Falls, New York. The town is located by the Genesee Canal, which is a few miles off today's New York State Thruway. The small towns of Waterloo and Auburn were close by. The geography of the land was suitable for farming. Vineyards lie on the land. Fishing was also quite abundant due to its location near the region of the Finger Lakes District. Because of its quiet and prolific nature, the women of the movement decided to plant their ideas at the heart of Seneca Falls. Upon her first arrival to Seneca Falls in 1847, Elizabeth Cady Stanton enjoyed the sights of the town. Elizabeth Cady Stanton lived on Washington Street in Seneca Falls, New York, in a plain white farmhouse. Elizabeth Cady Stanton's whole life was based on her beliefs of women equality. From the time she was younger, she was aware of the fact that women were inferior to men. The early life of Stanton was rough. At the age of 11, her only surviving brother died. Determined to fill the void in her family, she tried to excel in any activities usually done by men. She was left with her 4 sisters and parents. Her father, Daniel Cady, was a federal attorney who also served 1 term in United States Congress. Stanton, with knowledge about the United States, had high honors in education. She excelled in her languages and writing the most. She enjoyed English. Stanton recounts her love of reading poetry often, except for one day. In English class when she was young, her teacher told her to read a poem called "The Wife" by Washington Irving. The poem meant that women were dependent on men. While reading it aloud, Stanton burst into tears, saying that degrading readings like this were insulting to women. That incident was a determining factor in her life's ambition. As she graduated and began her life, she had met and married Henry Stanton and had 7 children. But these children didn't hold them back from standing up for their beliefs, especially against slavery, and attending the World Anti-Slavery Convention in London, England. At the convention, she had met a woman who had the same beliefs as she did. Lucretia Coffin Mott had been a lifetime believer in women's rights and the abolition of slavery, like Stanton. Unlike Stanton, though, she was a Quaker who was from Nantucket, Massachusetts. Her parents also believed in equality for all due to their religion. She received a high education and became a teacher. Her true interest in women's rights began when she discovered that male teachers were paid 3 times as much as female. She then married another Quaker named James Mott, and they moved to Philadelphia. They, together, had 6 children, one dying at the age of 2. She and Stanton became great friends at the Anti-Slavery Convention and first talked about women's rights. Together, with 3 other women, Jane Hunt, Martha Wright, and Mary Ann McClintock, made the movement possible. All of these women kept in touch and decided to meet together in Waterloo, New York, at Jane and Richard Hunt's home. Mott came from Philadelphia. Her sister, Martha Coffin Wright, came from Auburn. Stanton from Seneca Falls. Mary Ann McClintock of Waterloo, and Jane Hunt made all of their plans and thoughts present at this meeting. All of these women were once Quakers, except for Stanton. After this meeting earlier in the month of July, the convention was finally held. It was the absolute first women's rights convention. It took place on July 19th and 20th, 1848, and was conceived, organized, and carried to a successful conclusion within 11 days. 300 men and women, both black and white, attended the convention at the Wesleyan Methodist Chapel from as far away as Rochester and Syracuse. During a convention meeting, a well-known speaker would help draw in the people. A document that expressed the ideals and goals was prepared and read, then publicly altered and reformed and ratified. Then those who agreed with it had the chance to sign it. The document that was written and signed was the Declaration of Rights and Sentiments, primarily written by Stanton. This document expresses the problems of women inferiority and the resolution. Resolved, therefore, that being invested by the Creator with the same capabilities and the same consciousness of responsibility for their exercise, it is demonstrably the right and duty of woman, especially with man, to promote every righteous cause by every righteous means. 1/3 of the 300 participants, 68 women and 32 men, signed the declaration. Some of the men who signed included 3/5 of the organizers' husbands and Frederick Douglass, an African-American freed slave. Many men ridiculed the convention, but some embraced the concept. Many colored men and women also embraced women's rights, including Sojourner Truth, an African-American woman who composed a speech directly about the subject, called Ain't I a Woman? These opinions only strengthened Stanton's and Mott's determination. Only years after the convention, they united with Susan B. Anthony, another suffragist, and Lucy Stone. The outcomes of the Seneca Falls Convention were numerous. The outcomes later in the 1800s included many more individual conventions throughout the United States, such as the NAWSA, more supporters for the abolition of slavery, and the 19th Amendment in 1920, granting women the right to vote. The effects are infinite throughout the decades of the 20th century. In 1923, the first Equal Rights Amendment was introduced. In 1948, the first woman was elected into both houses of Congress. Eleanor Roosevelt led commission on the status of women in 1961. In 1963, the Equal Pay Act became federal law for men and women to be paid the same. In 1972, Congress passed Title IX of the Education Amendment for equal education programs for men and women. In 2009, Lilly Ledbetter's Fair Pay Act was signed into law. Today, we have many women congressmen and rulers internationally. We can only imagine what tomorrow will bring.